like to call this meeting of the Jobs and Economic Growth Committee to order. Today is Monday, February 21st. Members, we do have a quorum, and we have 3 bills on the calendar, all from Senator Draheim. So without objection, we'll go ahead and start with Senate File 1516. Senator Draheim.
Thank you, Chair Pratt and members. I have 3 bills before you today dealing with mainly workforce development and how we approach it as a state. I think, Chair, if it's okay, I would like to just move the A1 amendment first on 1516.
Senator Draheim offers the A1 Authors Amendment. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That motion carries. Senator Draheim.
Thank you, Chair. And 1516 is a really short bill, members, and the amendment just changed the dates and pushed them out. So on lines 1.7, instead of 22, it goes to 24. And then same line, the 23 gets changed to 2025. So real quick, this bill kind of builds on what we've worked on in the past, and tries to get at the training programs that we've modified over the 5-6 years that we've been here, and kind of just builds on what we did in the past. So it requires nonprofits who receive the grants to pay for performance portion of our grants that go to job training, to kind of push the envelope and get more nonprofits to use those. That's really it, members. I mean, it's literally one sentence. So any questions or comments?
Senator Champion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just really a really brief comment, because I know others were like, around the table asking me if I was going to make this a long or short meeting. I'm not going to make it a long meeting, but I want to go on the record to say that I hope that we would reject such an idea of numbers, right, percentages, like what I see there says of the amount appropriated in law from the Workforce Development Fund for grants to pass-through entities. So like 25% in fiscal year 2022, and then yada, yada, yada. And I know that there was an amendment that was just put on. But what I would, the reason why I would ask that we push back on it is because sometimes when you have organizations that are better resourced than others, that this may look a lot more attractive and a better sort of financing mechanism. Not to mention when you do pay for performance, usually the entity or the organization pays a lot of the costs up front and then get reimbursed. And there are a lot of organizations who are not as resourced or in the financial position by which to do that, even though they're good organizations, are able to deliver on what we believe to be important. So with that being said, I would just ask that you vote no on the amended 1516.
Senator Draheim.
Thank you, and thank you, Senator, for your comments. And I know we've had discussions about this in the past, and members, where I'm coming from with this bill is, we've had a few bad actors out there for nonprofits, but the majority of them have their heart in the right place and they're trying to do the right thing. And in the future, I think resources are going to tighten up. And I think it's our job to set the groundwork for future issues in funding. And we're going to have to pick and choose which programs get funded. And I want to pick the programs that work the best. and accomplish their goal. And the best way to do that is to reimburse the hardworking people at the nonprofit after they accomplish the goal. I am open to other ideas on how we up the game, if you will, with any and all nonprofits. We rely very heavily on those nonprofits to do the work that we set out here. But I think we need more checks and balances, and this is the best way I have seen to make sure they're actually accomplishing what the program is set out to do. So that's it, Chair. I appreciate everybody's time.
Thank you, Senator Draheim, and I was just looking up, we actually, Senator Draheim, if I recall, there is a statute that talks about pay for performance, isn't that correct?
Correct.
And I think that is, according, if I got the citation from Ms. Doyle Fontaine correctly, it's 116J.8747.
Correct.
So members, this is, this is not something that we haven't discussed before as an expectation that we should be paying, we should be reimbursing on a pay-per-performance type of model. Senator Champion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity to speak one more time. Yeah, we have 116J.8747, but it does not make it a mandatory notion that any nonprofit that we are going to resource receive their money that particular way. And I think that we can do it on an individual basis the way that we have. There are programs that it worked good for and others that it may not work so good for. And I don't think that we should govern out of, if there was a bad actor. We don't do that when we think in terms of businesses. We don't say that you're getting a tax cut once you demonstrated anything. We give them whatever we're going to give them, right? And we hope and pray that they do the right thing. And some people are good stewards of that money, and others that we have to have other checks and balances. I just don't want us, number one, singling out nonprofits. Number two, say that this is the way that we're going to go, because I think that we end up hurting so many others or neglecting others who could potentially and have demonstrated that they've done a good job. So thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the opportunity to speak again.
If you don't mind, Sir Draheim, I might just take a reaction to that is, a few years ago, coming into the Jobs Committee, recognizing that many of those that we were funding weren't doing pay-per-performance, working with many of those organizations to switch over to that model has been helpful. And I think Senator Draheim putting some aspirational guidelines out there, not that every nonprofit would have to take 25 or 50% of their funding and in this manner. We recognize, I think, Senator Housley has represented the family resiliency, where we know that would be a tough one to move to pay-per-performance. But we want to have more of these organizations moving to that model, and I think this is an opportunity to try to get there. Senator Draheim, any thoughts on that?
I think you hit it right on the head, Chair. And, we need these nonprofits. We need to be successful. And, we've been talking about this for a few years, and this is just a further nudge to get them to reevaluate how they operate and for us to prepare for what I think will be coming here in the next 2 bienniums with more fiscal constraints than what we've been blessed with.
Is there any other discussion on Senate File 1516? Okay, seeing none, Senate File 1516 will be laid over for possible inclusion. Senator Draheim, next we have Senate File 210.
Thank you, Chair and members. The Senate File 210 actually does not have an amendment. So the bill would require DEED to give priority to job training programs in high-wage, high-demand careers when awarding competitive job training grants. So the whole concept is here, after getting feedback from a lot of employers want to train and will train their own employees, especially at the entry level. Let's put some more resources for those people that need to get retrained into a higher bracket, higher income, so they can support their family long-term and have a career path type job that pays better than average. There is a statute on this also, members, are already defined. 116L.99, Women in High Wage, High Demand, Non-Traditional Job Grant Program is the title. So this is just my way of nudging the agency to take that in consideration when they are giving grants out. Let's get some of those grants to some of the higher paying jobs to help the people that need to be retrained. So they would have opportunity to make a little higher than average wage.
Any questions, Senator Champion?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Draheim, the language that you're reading was actually also a part of the equity grant that we started in 2016, where we saw a need to make sure that there was funding available for, high wage jobs and even for, non-traditional, jobs that are geared towards women and others, right? But the one thing that we really tried not to do, and I hope that you will take this, in the spirit in which I'm giving it, is that when we think about the notion of jobs and putting people on a career path, I think we have to recognize that there are a number of careers that people like to be engaged in, or a career that is both satisfying, that is fulfilling, and it may not be the highest paid. For an example, teachers. We value them, but we don't really value them financially quite the way that we should. And I just want to make sure that we're leaving room for that and not pitting one against the other. That I think that the competitive grants that we put forward for high demand, high wage, that is not to the exclusion of others who may choose a career path that may not be as financially satisfying. But we hope that, over the life of their career, that they'll start making more and more money, and therefore it will do all the things that they have looked for it to do, because that would be a part of their long-term strategy. I just hope that you would consider that as this bill moves forward, because I think the way that you have it here is that it gives priority to certain programs or organizations that focus on job training in high wage and high demand careers. And so I just hope that you would not pit one versus the other. But with that being said, can you tell me from your vantage point what is considered a high wage or high demand career right now as you're sitting there at the dais?
Senator Draheim.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments, Senator Champion. And, I believe all jobs are honorable, wholeheartedly. Some of the feedback I've gotten from people that have looked at training programs was that most of the training programs were entry level. And I think the whole concept of this is maybe this is just a tad higher than entry level. So people are gonna take the time and effort to do some training. There will be a percentage of those people that will want to maybe be challenged more than a lot of the other training programs we had. That does not mean that those other training programs that we had aren't important. They definitely are. This is just something I think we need to expand on. And what the definition in statute is high wage, high demand means occupations that represent at least 0.1% of total employment in the base year, have an annual median salary which is higher than the average for the current year, and are projected to have more total openings as a share of employment than the average. That is the definition in statute, Senator.
Mr. Chair, just one last follow-up.
Senator Champion.
So thank you for that, Senator Draheim. If you think about that definition, it's kind of an interesting definition, but okay, I'll take that. But what I will say is, I think it's important for us as a jobs committee not to pick winners and losers, and for us to say, how do we encourage those folks to challenge them, but also create a pathway for someone who is coming in on an entry-level, in an entry-level position, and maybe once they make that entry-level position, that opens up the door for them to see other opportunities. But we don't want to dismiss them from, and for them not to be prioritized because someone else may be on a different pathway and at a different stage in their life. And I think that we have to be comprehensive, because if we neglect them, then we will be cutting off our nose to spite our face. So thank you, Senator Draheim, because I know that will be something that you're going to continue to work on, and I don't mind continuing to work on it with you, but I hope that you would take my comments more from a vantage point for us to be as comprehensive as possible and to give different Minnesotans what they need in order to go from point A to point B. So thank you.
Senator Draheim, I have a question unless you want to respond to Senator Champion.
You know, Chair, as you know, and I think Senator Champion knows, I'm always willing to work on all of my bills to the bitter end. I think we're talking the same language. You know, if we need to tweak the bill, Chair, it'll obviously be up to your discretion as it moves forward, as we're laying this one over also. But I would gladly take input. If anybody has any ideas, you know, please reach out.
So Senator Draheim, kind of to the bill, when we're talking about high wage, and I went back and looked at, you know, at that definition, it doesn't necessarily say starting wage is higher. It says, it really talks to the idea that there's progression in high wage, call it living wage, whatever you want to call it, but something above minimum wage that is a skill set need. And, you know, one of my goals in this role is not just to be someone who creates jobs, but helps people create career paths. You know, we could talk about teachers, and even back on my days on the school board, I always was concerned with the pay scale that brought in a young teacher, and those low wages were subsidizing, you know, some of the more senior teachers when they're effectively doing the same job. And it seemed inherently unfair. Now, not that we shouldn't be rewarding experience, and there's something to experience that brings a better, you know, deserves to be compensated at a higher level. You're doing your job better with experience. But to set it up on that type of scale with that type of discrepancy always bothered me. Now I'm sure I'm going to get about 150 emails on that. But Senator Draheim, if you could speak to the initial question, and that was, are we really talking about starting wage, or are we talking about kind of the median wage for that role?
Thank you, Chair. It says annual median salary, which is higher than the average salary. So I think the average median income is around $53,000 for a family of four in Minnesota, or at least the last time I looked. And I've requested new numbers. But so we're talking above average. So I think it's the average working person salary is what I would define it. And we could when we bring this back, hopefully later this year at your discretion, I would hope to have those hard numbers so we can look at the range that we're talking historically on income for the average family.
Senator Putnam.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Draheim, I just have a question because I'm still struggling sort of to conceptualize the kinds of careers that we're talking about. So this isn't a police officer, wouldn't count in this necessarily. We're talking about, or a teacher. So what would the job look like? Do you have examples? Because I understand the numerical value here, but what kind of careers are we looking for?
You know, Chair, if I could, thank you, Senator Putnam. It would be up to whoever would bring forward a proposal to deed on a job training program. And traditionally, the job training, which is very important, all education's important, but it's been more of the bottom portion of the pay scale and more entry level, which are obviously important. But let's have some other options in there. And I don't want to, there's no preset career path. You know, the first thing that popped into my head was maybe some computer or technology, maybe some CNC or some other technology type training in manufacturing, which would pay quite well, I would think would fall under this. But that is up to the industries to, and the nonprofits to kind of push people into whatever jobs are above average openings. You know, the demand has to be there. Right now, of course, I just came from an HHS hearing and we were talking about nursing. And we've had long-term care talk. Senator Housley's worked hard on that, where we have a whole bunch of job openings there. And then they'd have to fit into not only the job openings, but also that income range that we're referring. But if we need to restructure it, I am open. I am open for that idea. But I don't want to put something in statute and narrow it to a career specific to a type of industry, where I'd like to keep it open. And as times change, you know, every couple bienniums, you know, DEED would have the tools in their toolbox to approve funding to help people achieve a little more.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks, Senator Draheim. That was very helpful.
And Senator Draheim, I think, you know, we focused quite a bit of discussion on high wage. You also talked about high demand, that these are careers that are going to be around for a while, one where there is a direct shortage and creates that career path. So I thank you for doing that. Senator Champion.
Mr. Chair, the last thing that I'll say, and thanks Senator Draheim for always his openness to try to tweak a bill and to, you know, think about what might be helpful. Senator Draheim, my concern is that this bill doesn't create the options that you're talking about. It sort of limits, and then it puts in this whole notion of priority, right? So what competitive grants should do is create options and opportunity, not me saying which job or which profession or which one is better than the other, but find ways by which to think about the various levels of employment opportunities that Minnesotans would have, and if there are training initiatives that will move someone who's on the sideline into entry level, then moving them from the entry level into something else, or someone who's at a time in their life or their career where they need to change and they're looking for training in order to do that. I want to make sure that we have options and opportunities for all, and not just tell DEED that you have to give priority to a specific type of program. And I do think it's important to think about long-term care aides, for an example, that I know that in nursing homes. I do think that's important. I think we got to find a way in order to get more of them into that profession, but also raise the wages in a way that really makes that a desirable, for lack of a better word, career choice. And so I just want to make sure that we're not saying, okay, because you decided to go into science and you decided to go care for people, that I'm going to say that a program should give more to you and a priority to a program that's geared towards you than someone who also needs that help. So I just don't want us to be put in that sort of position. I want us to be as thoughtful and as comprehensive as possible. So thank you, and I know that you usually do those things. I just want to make sure I put that on the record and for us to continue to work on this.
Well, thank you, Senator Champion, and as a director at a long-term care facility, I can tell you we are struggling to find people to do that very, very important work. And you're right, the reimbursements that we get from the federal government and are insufficient. We're losing, we're losing staff that want to work in a long-term care facility, can walk down the hallway connected to St. Francis Hospital and get $15 an hour more. So that's a difficult, I think you bring up a very interesting conundrum in this aspect. But I think in general, and it's not to say that DEED must put all their money into that. It just, but it should, and I think Senator Draheim has left an opening here to say give priority to find those opportunities where we can create those long-term career paths for people that can be family sustaining, that can help them build a savings account, that can, I think my first term, I think you and I both served on Ladders Out of Poverty, which was one of the things that was killed by the Sunset Commission at one point in time, but a very useful and I think interesting opportunity to try to move people into those sustaining roles and be financially independent. And quite honestly, be able to begin to build wealth. So, but you bring up an interesting point, and thank you for that. Senator Draheim, any closing comments on Senate File 210?
No, members,
Oh,
Mr.
I'm sorry.
Chair.
I'm sorry, Senator Johnson Stewart, I didn't see your hand there.
That's okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And actually, I've got a few technical devices here because I can't get my computer to work. Anyway, I just have a quick response to Senator Putnam's comment. I think this is a great idea, and I appreciate Senator Draheim bringing this forth. I have been working for many years, surprisingly, with our public works and construction professionals and our surveyors. Specifically, there is a huge need for those very high-paying, entry-level, even at the entry-level jobs in greater Minnesota. And so I'm excited about this. I think there are some opportunities for, I call them family sustaining or house buying jobs. And while they're not all technical or science-based, Senator Champion, I think they definitely serve a role, and I've already done work on this. So I appreciate Senator Draheim bringing this forward, and I just wanted to have some input there and affirm this. So thank you.
Thank you, Senator Johnson Stewart. Okay, before I move on, are there any other hands on Zoom that I've missed? All right. Senator Draheim, any closing comments on Senate File 210 before we hold it over?
thank you, Chair Pratt, and members for the discussion. And if we have ideas on how to tweak that language for more comfort, I think we're all on the same page. If we have to work with nonpartisan to maybe massage that language a little bit more. But I think the surveyors are a great example, and we have talked about that. Thank you for bringing that up, Senator. We just have to push the boundaries a little bit and, find a home for everybody. And I appreciate everybody's time.
Thank you, Senator Draheim. Senate File 210 will be held over for possible inclusion. Members, the last bill we have on the agenda today is Senate File 211. Senator Draheim. Do you have an amendment?
I do have an amendment, Chair. I have the A3 amendment, if we could move that right away.
Senator Draheim moves the A3 amendment. This is an author's amendment to put the bill in the form that he wants it. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Senator Draheim, to your amended bill.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the opportunity to talk about these three topics today. Members, this is just, again, another bill looking at a lot of the good people that do the work for us through our grant programs, and to make sure that our resources are going to the intent of the program and not just for administrative cost or executive pay. And I tried to find that balance of a number, and it's all scalable. So at the, if you look at line 1.16, 80% of the governor's salary would be about $139,000 a year. So this amended bill would require nonprofits who receive grant money from DEED to give a report to the agency by September 1st. And then they would compile it and then give a report to the committees, Senator Pratt's committee and then the House committee, on pay that is 80% above or 80% of the governor's pay. And just help us start compiling the administrative expense for some of these nonprofits. And, you know, there's been a few bad actors out there. Like I said before, most of these groups are good groups. I'm gonna reward the good groups. And I wanna weed out the bad apples. You know, the press has covered numerous nonprofits as of late that probably are less than desirable for state funding. We'll let them play out in the courts. We don't need to bring that up today. But I want to reward the good people. I want to reward the people that are putting their heart and soul in their objective for their nonprofit. And I think reporting back to us on their financials, we can get a better gauge of the people that are really dedicated to doing the good work that their mission is for whatever grant they're receiving from us or through us as a state. Pretty straightforward, members.
Senator Champion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Senator Draheim, for your bill. Quick question for you, two questions, actually. Can't we just put as a provision that any of the proceeds that we provide can't be used for, can only be used for programming and not necessarily for salaries of other employees? Because to me, the whole reason why we are doing it is because we want to make sure those employees get the training or those apprentices or whatever. So one, couldn't we just do that? And two, why is the focus on nonprofits? I know that there's been some things in the news that about some other federal stuff that we don't have to get into as far as that's concerned. I just don't want us to have a knee-jerk reaction to some things where that didn't really concern us, right? Because it wasn't any of our quote-unquote state funds. So I'm just trying to make sure that we're not ending up, you know, doing something because of other things that are happening out there. So why is the focus on nonprofits? And do you think that we should do something similar to this for profits? So if you could speak to those three things, that would be great. Because we do and have provided money for for-profit entities as well.
Senator Champion, before I go to Senator Draheim, if you'd yield for a question.
However,
I'm actually not familiar with any for-profits that we funded. Can you provide an example?
I will certainly do that. So give me an opportunity to find it, but I know that we've done it because I looked at it before. So I will certainly do that.
Thank you. And I bring that up because I don't recall doing
I know, I
that during my tenure as chair. So,
Listen, I know. I don't take it any other way than just a question, okay? I'm going to get you the information, oh great one.
thank you. Senator Draheim, any,
So do we address you, Chair, as, oh, great one, or Chair? I mean,
He is the great one. That's my friend.
Chair Pratt, I've been on this committee for 6 years, and I think there could be some for-profit that I'm not aware of, but I do not recall any in my this would be my 6th year in this committee. And you bring up a great point. If there is something else out there, you know, that is something we can look at. As far as saying all of our resources going to programming and not to administration, I would be in favor of that. I am just trying to drive at what can we do to set up the agencies to have the biggest impact to help people get a job, have a career path. And that's what these three bills are really geared towards. I think we're gonna be facing some really tough years coming up in the near future. And we need to get our house in order, and our house is not in order. And I think these are just some simple things. You know, if you want me to work on a bill, I'll put you as chief or second author on the administrative, not being included in grants. We use grants for the public. Most of the resources that we have that go through a lot of our state agencies, in this area, a lot of them go to nonprofits, and then some of it goes to Min State, one of the university systems in the state, and they do good work too. But a lot of the grant money, especially in the metro, ends up through one of those good nonprofits that are trying to do the good work in the communities that sometimes the government can't get into. So I'm open for ideas. This is my idea, with help of staff. So Senator Champion, I'm open, but for now, this is what I came up with.
Senator Champion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and just as a quick look, I will certainly pull some other things together and give the committee that information. But we've also made investments through the Minnesota Investment Fund and the Job Creation Fund that went to for-profits. And I was trying to figure out the name of that wood production company, but I think we did it last year where they had to produce so much wood in order to get some funding as well. So I'll have to take a look at that, and I'll be able to give you that, especially. And then, of course, for the angel investment tax credit, that's a slightly different notion, but that's another one. But I will certainly bring additional information as well. That's our quick look, really quick.
And Senator Champion, you're right. There have been grants to incent economic development within the state of Minnesota, rather than, I think, where Senator Draheim is going with this on the jobs, workforce development aspect of it. And so, I would concur with you, and Verso would be one where we tried to save almost 200 jobs before they closed up, to help them retool in order to move from the high glossy paper, calendarized paper, over to recycling and more packaging production. Unfortunately, that didn't work out, and the state's not out any money for that. But sometimes you're correct, we do that. I think there's an interesting point here in that we also oftentimes, in the current statute, allow for an administrative fee to go along with the execution of the grant. And so, understanding that if we do, that there's no administrative fee, that there's going to be some concern from the nonprofit community as well. Senator Champion?
So thank you, Mr. Chair. And even with that administrative fee, I totally know what it is that you're talking about. But again, if we're getting to what I would consider Senator Draheim's concern, which is that administrative fee or money coming from the state being used for high salaried employees, that we can still give them the administrative fee. There are other ways by which to do it, but we can just, put some guardrails around it and what it should be spent for. And so I don't have a problem with us, thinking through these things. I just want us to be balanced, for-profit, nonprofit, whichever ways that is, and whatever concerns that we have, we should make it universal if there's going to be that concern. Because I do still say there are for-profits that we've given revenue to that did the right thing with it. They didn't have any problems. And then there are others where some things just didn't work out. That's all I want us to consider. So thank you, Mr. Chair, for allowing me to speak one last time.
Senator Draheim, any thoughts?
Thank you, Chair Pratt. I think it's great discussion, and we can work with council and see if there's some guide rails, if there's a separate chapter or statute that deals just with the grants, what I'm trying to get at, and maybe I have the wrong statute. But we'll continue to work on that. And I just appreciate everybody's time and discussion on these important topics.
Well, thank you, Senator Draheim. And thank you, members. I think we have had a good discussion on this. We all want to be good stewards of our financial resources. We know that this is the taxpayers' money that we're allocating, and we want to be judicious, but also, as the Jobs Committee, we want to make sure that we're being as effective as possible. Right now, our workforce is still down 100,000 people from where it was prior to the pandemic. And we've got almost 2 job openings for every unemployed person. We need to figure out how to get Minnesota back to work and make sure that we're providing the skills not only for the jobs of today, but I think, as Senator Draheim kind of laid out in his bill for high demand, for the jobs of tomorrow as well. Members, right now, we don't have a meeting scheduled for Wednesday. I want to bring the committee up to speed with a conversation I had with Senator Champion, and that most of the bills we have are financial, and I would like to not hear any finance bills until after the February forecast comes out. So that's the timing and part of the reason why we haven't been meeting as regularly as we normally would. Did I miss any questions on Zoom? So, thank you. We'll lay over Senate File 211 for possible inclusion. I forgot that part of my speech. Is there any other business to come before the committee? Okay, members, seeing none, we'll stand adjourned, and we'll notify you when the next hearing will be. Thanks.